Hello, welcome to the inaugural online 2017 Eating Disorder Hope Conference. We are thrilled to have you here. And our first presentation is excellent, and it is by Dr. Margaret Najeeb. Her topic is Not Beyond Hope, Harnessing the Psychological Power of Hope for Recovery and Beyond. Margaret Najeeb, is a clinical psychologist specializing in Christian counseling, inner healing, treating eating disorders, trauma, addiction, self-injury, and mood disorders. For over 15 years, she has provided family and group therapy. Formerly as spiritual clinical director at Timberline Knowles, Margaret created and launched the Christian Treatment Path and oversaw the General Spirituality Program. And her goal was to restore each resident to wholeness through a deeper relationship with God. And with that, I just wanted to give you a few housekeeping tips. We do have a chat window where you can type in any comments to us. We also have a questions window. If you have any questions for Margaret, please type those in there during the presentation. We will try to address them at the end. If unable to address your presentation, or your question, we will then email you afterward. There's a handouts section on your screen where there's some downloadable handouts. And most excitingly, Dr. Najeeb's book, she is offering one signed copy to a lucky attendee. So if you're interested in that, be sure and enter your name in the questions panel, and beside it put book drawing. And with that, I'm going to hand it over to Margaret. Welcome.
Thank you so much, Jacqueline, and thank you everyone for joining us on this webinar. I'm excited to be a part of this inaugural online conference, which I think is such a wonderful idea. And today I'm going to talk to you about hope. So before we started, I wanted to share, because I'm so excited about it, I just came out with a new book that is available to anyone, but it's also a book that we use at Timberline Knowles with the residents, and it's called Souls Like Stars. And there's actually a whole hope chapter in the book, and as you can see, it's filled with beautiful photography and workbook style. So if you really love this talk, I would recommend getting the book and working through it, either for yourself or for clients. And the reason why I chose the topic of hope is, as a therapist for several years, what I came to find was that if people could hold on to their hope, or you could give them a little bit of hope, it made such a big difference in their life, in their recovery, and in beyond recovery. And several years ago, I wanted to get away from just focusing on pathology and problems with my clients, and how can I help strengthen them and focus on positive things. So I started studying positive psychology, which looks at things like hope and joy and happiness, and measures, why is it that one person is more hopeful and joyful than another, and found hope to be really critical in so many aspects of who we are. So excited to share that with you today. And so I'll start off just with a question. And the question is this: got hope? I don't know if you guys remember, probably dating myself, the old milk commercials, but they were always, got milk. And so my question for you is, got hope? And actually what I'd love for you to do right now, just in a still, quick moment, is I want you to ask your heart that question, ask your soul that question: do I have hope? And I want you to imagine a container, and I want you to just ask, what does my container of hope look like? And how full or empty is my container of hope? And it's a good little exercise just to check in and see where you're at. So, because I really do believe we are meant to have that container just overflowing. And sometimes it's just a shift and an adjustment to get there. And we're going to talk about how, if you feel like that container of hope is low, or you're working with someone and that container of hope is low, how that can be something that's abundant and overflowing. So a little bit of the research on hope, and it's really astounding to look at all of the amazing effects that hope has on us. And it really affects us, our whole person, body, soul, and spirit. And so this particular research that I'm sharing with you now is based on giving people a hope questionnaire, which I'll share with you later, and actually getting a measurement of how high, low, or medium their levels of hope are. So the research has shown that if you measure high on measures of hope, this is how it affects your body, your biology. People with high measures of hope tend to have better physical health. They tend to have better athletic performance. So if you look at, these really high-performing athletes like the Michael Jordans of the world, they score incredibly high on hope. So it's not just their physical talent, but it's hope plus their physical talent that helps them to perform and thrive in their athleticism. Academic success is linked with high measures of hope. So kids and adults in school do better when they have high measures of hope. Hope is also correlated with achieving goals, and you'll see later the scientific definition of hope includes goals. And so people who have high hope tend to actually achieve their goals, even if their goals are loftier, and oftentimes their goals are loftier. And then there's other fun things, like we tend to be more patient when we have high measures of hope. So those are some around the body, and I also talked about some that are more around the soul. So we tend to use the word soul and spirit interchangeably in our culture. When you look at the etymology of that word soul, it actually comes from the Greek, and the Greek word is psyche. So that should sound familiar to you. It's where we get the word psychology. And when you look at that word psyche, it actually means three things. It means the mind, which is our thoughts and our beliefs. It means our emotions, and it means our will or behavior. So the soul, the psyche, is the interconnectedness of our thoughts, feelings, and behavior, which happens to be the definition of psychology, right? Psychology is the study of the interaction of our thoughts, feelings, and behavior. So when specifically looking at the soul, I've already talked about some of them. High hope is connected with academic success, it's connected with achieving goals, patience, and then the ones I didn't list are things like social competence, right? So the ability to connect with others and feel confident in your ability to connect. And it also correlates with well-being, or just overall sense of well-being, and optimism, which is a sense of expectancy, positive expectancy into the future. So our body connects us with the external world, and our soul, our psyche, obviously connects us with our inner world of thoughts, feelings, and our sense of, well-being. And then finally,
I don't care if you don't like me. I love me.
Okay, I forgot I put her in there. I wanted to put her in there as an example of a healthy soul. Your soul tells of your personality. And so it's really important people with high measures of hope know their personality, and they're proud of their personality. They don't have any shame around their personality. So one of the interventions that I like to suggest around that, if people do struggle with having a positive view of their personality, is to do a simple personality test like the Myers-Briggs. And you can go to like humanmetrics.com and download a free version, which is actually quite good. And it's fun to see, how you're wired, and to come to appreciate that instead of not appreciate that. Okay. And then finally, hope, most importantly, affects our spirit. So if you look at this diagram, it looks at, really what the whole person is all about. So your body, soul, and spirit. Your body is the obvious, your nerves, your brain, your organs, your cells, this wonderful physical machine that you have to help you do life. And then your soul is your psyche, your personality, it's your mind, it's your beliefs, attitudes, emotions. And then you see there in the center, the essence, the core of who we are is the spirit. And that's connected to the heart. When we talk about the heart, we talk about the core of someone is their heart, right? There's the physical heart, and then there's the spirit, your heart. And that's where we have a sense of meaning and purpose, and understand and experience, deep spiritual things like love. So the areas that are affected are valuable, not only in the body and soul, but also in the spirit, and I'll share those in a little bit. What's interesting about the heart and the spirit is they are connected. There is a connection between our physical heart and our sense of spirit, that which is greater than us. I threw in this ancient proverb about that because I think it applies to mental health. And the proverb is this: hope deferred makes the heart sick. And you know, when I first started off in counseling, I remember back in grad school, one of my favorite professors saying to me one day, back when I would eat up anything that was practical, you know, please just tell me how to work with people, when I was sitting across from them. And I remember him saying, Margaret, in every first session, you should give people a little bit of magic. And I remember going home that day wondering, what in the world is he talking about? What does he mean, give them a little bit of magic? And as I got out there and discovered, it's hope. When people have hope, it's like magic. But the opposite is also true. When we don't have hope, we have, as this proverb would say, heart sickness. And the opposite is also true of that research. You know, high hope brings all those wonderful things, but low hope brings the opposite of those things. So hope deferred, meaning putting your hope into something else, makes our physical heart sick, and our sense of essence and meaning and purpose. It disconnects us from that when we have low hope. So watch this video. It's a little bit about the science of the heart. And I'm going to show you how there actually is a link between the science in the physical heart and in our spiritual heart. Okay, I hope you caught that amazing information. I'm going to reiterate some of it for us. So scientists have actually shown that the heart is more than just a pump. That, you know, there's the brain is kind of the popular one right now. Everyone's talking about the brain, and the brain is so important. It's so great that we're learning so much about the brain. But what's interesting about this science is they're showing that the heart may even be more important than the brain. So the heart is actually the first piece of anatomy that is created when we're in the fetus, and that your heart actually sends more signals to your body than your brain does. And what's so interesting about the heart is that, you know, your whole body is electrical. And so there's this electromagnetic field that each organ puts out. The energy that's put out by the brain is about 1 inch, but the energy through this electromagnetic field that is put out by the heart goes 6 to 12 feet. And what's fascinating about that is the heart has this unique ability to encode emotion. So whatever you're feeling in the moment gets coded into this electromagnetic field and sent 6 to 12 feet. So obviously that emotion gets sent throughout your body. So if you're feeling joy, that is being coded and sent through your body. If you're feeling sadness, that's being sent through your body. And what's interesting is that's also being sent out of your body, 6 to 12 feet. So you ever walk in a room and you hear someone say, man, you can cut the tension in here with a knife, before even knowing what's happening. But it's because there's an actual science behind that. So this is part of the reason why hope is so powerful. When you're encoding hope, that's why we have physical health and emotional health, because that feeling is actually being sent throughout your body. And we know the opposite in mental health, that when you're depressed and anxious over time, that you tend to struggle with some physical illnesses because of that. And that's, once again, because of the science of the heart, that you're sending all of that emotion throughout your body, and our body is actually negatively affected by that. But in the opposite, when we send hope, joy, happiness, it profoundly influences our behavior, our emotions, our choices, and ultimately our results in a really positive way. So you can harness this science when you understand biofeedback. And so there's an actual device through heartmath.org that you can buy. It's actually an app that you can use. It just has a little connector, or you can do the laptop version. But even if you don't have it, you can use this skill with yourself or with your clients, and it actually increases that healthy level. And what they call that is coherence. But let me tell you how to do it first, and then I'll talk a little bit about coherence. There's only 3 steps, so it's really easy. The first step is what they call heart focus. So you just literally focus on the physical area of your chest, your heart. You turn your attention towards your heart. The second step is heart breathing. So you breathe probably a little more deeply than normal. We tend to breathe shallowly, especially when we're anxious. So you breathe deeply and normally, and you imagine the breath going in your heart and out of your heart. And then the third step is the piece where the science really comes in and where the benefits really come in. So you need to evoke a heart feeling. So what does that mean? That means that you evoke something where you feel the positive emotion in the moment. So I can do this really easy. I have a 2-year-old and a 4-year-old niece, and the minute I think of little Emma and Cara, I just get the fuzzies all inside. It's that really good feeling. So it would be something like that, where in the moment it evokes that positive emotion, and then you do all 3 at the same time. So I would sit here, I'm focusing on the physical area of my heart, I'm imagining the breath going in and out, and I'm thinking about the love I feel for my nieces. Now, what's amazing is when you do that over time, and they say 5 minutes a day is really all you need, this is the benefit. It's based on heart rate variability, and so if you were to look at an EKG, when it's nice and even, that's when you're in this perfect state of coherence. But when we're anxious or depressed or scared, we get this jaggedy kind of EKG. And so we can bring that to a stable place through this heart biofeedback and learning coherence. And when you're in coherence, there's clarity of thought, there's emotional balance, there's synchronization of all the systems in your body, there's increased parasympathetic activity, and that's important because that's that part of our nervous system that calms us. And there's just physical health and vitality. So they first started doing this research with people with heart attacks, and they found that they didn't have to take their medicine as much, like that they were getting more healed just by doing this. And now, we use it for everything, and I've used it often with my clients. So just a little tip, something to try. Okay, so finally, spirit. The research shows that high hope obviously affects your heart, which is such a big key of there's a connection there between your physical heart and your spiritual sense. And so things like self-worth, meaningful life, gratitude are all increased when you have high measures of hope. And there's this sense of freedom that people talk about when they have high measures of hope. And what do I mean by that? This freedom to just be yourself, to really be who you are at your core. And there's this sense of connectedness, right? That existential sense of, oh, I'm connected in this world. And so, man, super powerful. As our hope increases, our spirits are nurtured. And when our spirits are nurtured, which is the essence of who we are, then obviously that trickles down into our soul, our thoughts, our feelings, and to our body. So I love this quote. It says this: true freedom is always spiritual. It has something to do with your innermost being, which cannot be chained, handcuffed, or put into a jail. So if you think about it with eating disorders, it's the opposite of that. The eating disorder becomes this jail. It becomes these handcuffs. It becomes this restricting way of living. And so it's so important for those of us who are in the eating disorder treatment world to make sure we're not only just doing the body interventions, right, through nutrition, which is so important, through medication, general health, and that we're not just doing the psychological interventions, which is, you know, the DBT and the CBT to help them increase that healthy self-esteem and deal with underlying issues, but that we're also doing the spiritual work. And I know that's my bias as someone who is the spiritual director at Timberline, but really, if you think of how we're made up, body, soul, spirit, then it's really important for us in the eating disorder field to make sure we're doing deliberate work. And if you do hope work with your clients, you are doing that spiritual work as well as the psychological and the physical. Okay, so back to that quote, hope deferred makes the heart sick. I remember looking up that quote and really wanting to understand, what does that mean? And when I looked at it, it meant that when you put your hope in something that really doesn't produce, for example, like putting my hope in an eating disorder, then I'm going to inevitably be hopeless and have that heart sick feeling, because I'm putting my hope in something that can't give me the longing or can't meet my needs or my desires, really, and what you can. So this little guy represents that. You know, where is that hope going? And when I asked you earlier, you know, how big is your hope, or that container, if you had that sense of like, man, I think I actually feel low in hope right now, then the next question that I would ask, and this is a question that I propose to my clients, and really is the first intervention when talking about hope with your clients, is just to ask them, where are you putting your hope? If you're feeling heart sickness and you've deferred your hope into something that really doesn't give you hope. So you see listed there some of the things that I see that we can tend to put our hope in that really doesn't give us hope. So alcohol, food, sex, image, you know, beauty. And it's the first step in recognizing, wow, this is why I feel hopeless, because ultimately I'm putting my hope in something that can't give me what I need or want. So moving on, I wanted to share with you the definition from the research on hope. Snyder wrote a book called Toward a Psychology of Hope. It came out in 2000. He has done the bulk of the research, at least initially, in positive psychology when it comes to hope. And this is the definition that he prescribes for hope: the overall perception that goals can be met. That's why hope is not necessarily connected to talent or IQ. It's connected to your perception of, can I do it? And he breaks down hope into two parts. So it's your overall sense of hope, but underneath that, what makes up that are two things. One, he calls agency thoughts. And agency thoughts is just a fancy way of saying, when you have a goal, the thoughts around that goal are positive. Like, yes, I can do it. So if I had the goal, let's say, to run a marathon, my agency thoughts, if I were a high hope person, would be, man, I can do this through training, through, you know, I can do that. I can run a marathon. And then pathways to achievement, you also need not only the thoughts, but you need pathways. So pathways is, you have multiple ways to get to your goal. So sometimes our agency thoughts are really positive. Yes, I can run that marathon. And then the first day I get out there to try to run and I can't even make a mile, and I come back discouraged, like, oh, I can never do that. That's an example of having good agency thoughts, but not recognizing that you need pathways. You need multiple ways to get to the same goal. So someone with high pathways would come back and say, okay, that didn't really work, and maybe I need other ways to get there. Maybe I need to run with a partner. I need to have a trainer. And so that would be an example of someone who doesn't give up hope because they realize you may need several ways to get to your goal. The research shows that high hope goals, meaning you've set a goal and you have high hope, those people tend to have better outcomes. They tend to have a greater number of goals. They tend to set more difficult goals. They're not afraid to aim a little higher. And interestingly, they tend to be more concrete in achieving those goals and having really good coping skills for reaching goals. And like I was saying earlier, the effects of high hope don't correlate with intelligence or optimism. It really correlates with that sense of I can do it and I'll come up with multiple ways to get there. So think of recovery. Recovery doesn't happen the first time around. I've worked with people who've come to Timberline and maybe it was their second or third time in residential. But to elicit that hope of like, okay, with every time you've been in treatment, you've learned something else. And so we're just going to come up with, we're going to figure out the other things that weren't happening for you so that you can get to that goal of recovery. High hope and optimism, sometimes people get those two confused. So both hope and optimism affect your goals, your emotions, your coping behaviors, your goal achievement, and ultimately your well-being. But when you look at the research, hope is more focused on the thoughts related to being able to achieve your goals, and optimism is more related on just generalized expectancy for a good outcome. So they do work together, but hope is more goals and action versus optimism is just kind of a looking forward and being positive. So remember, those two things make up hope, your thoughts. And so if you're struggling with hope and you want to increase your hope, you want to look at those agency thoughts, your stinking thinking, and work with that. And then you want to have help coming up with pathways to get to that goal. So here's the hope scale that I was telling you about that Snyder devised. And you can give this to your clients or you can take it yourself if you like. And if you just Google Snyder hope scale, it'll come right up. And the directions as to how to score it will come right up. It's super easy. As you can see, it's just 12 items on a Likert scale, and it will give you an overall hope score. So you'll be able to see, are you low, medium, or high in hope? But then it will also give you your agency score and your pathway score, so you can see which one maybe you need a little help with, and maybe which one is your strength. So cultivating hope, when you're wanting to do that, it's helpful, number one, to ask people where you're putting your hope so that they can begin to realign their hope. Number two, explain to them the definition of hope, that there's agency and pathways. And then the first step would be to help them develop goal-setting skills. So many times people haven't really learned how to even develop their skills to set goals. So here are some things that go along with that are helpful to keep in mind. Number one, encourage goals, whether it's for yourself or for someone else, that excite you and inspire you. That's going to help you in your ability to achieve those goals more than if someone chooses goals for you or you choose things that really you're not interested in. Because remember, hope's connected to your heart, your sense of meaning and purpose and the things that make you come alive. Two, calibrate to the level. So obviously for me, I never run, probably couldn't run a mile right now if you told me to. And so probably a marathon, 26 miles, would not be a good first goal for me. Maybe a 5K would be a first goal. And then over time, you know, maybe I could do a marathon. But I really wouldn't be excited or inspired by that. So we're just going to cross that off my list completely. The next is develop several goals to choose from, have clear markers. And then this one's really interesting, we and me goals. So we goals are much more empowering than me goals. So back to the marathon thing, a we goal, you know, me and my sister and my brother maybe running a marathon would be much more powerful than just a me goal. Then the next step would be to help someone with their agency, with their thoughts. So internal personal standards are much more energizing than externally based. You want to help someone set stretch goals. You know, you want to have a little bit of a challenge. It's going to more empower you than something really easy or something really hard. Then you're going to help others or yourself monitor that self-talk, because the self-talk is the key to what those thoughts are. Are they negative or positive? Are they hopeful or not? Teamwork is really helpful here. Stories of other people's successes is really helpful here. And then just learning to enjoy the process and not just get caught up in the result of the goal is also helpful. And then finally, to improve pathways, if you've heard of SMART skills, Google this. It's often used in the business leadership area. But SMART stands for specific, measurable, attainable, realistic, and time sensitive. So it's a really just practical way to help someone start the process of achieving their goal. And what I love about SMART goals is if you think about, for example, at one point I had the goal to write this book, and that wasn't going to happen overnight. But SMART goal says, okay, this might be it might take you a year to write this book, but what's the thing that you do in the first 3 months? And so it calculates it by every 3 months. You figure out what you would do first 3 months, you know, and moving on. And I do think that's really helpful too when looking at treatment and setting goals for treatment. So also you're going to want to build resilience and perseverance thinking, know that it's good to ask for help, and then change any kind of fixed mindsets to growth, and we'll explain that in a second. So Carol Dweck came out with the research about mindsets, and it's super helpful. And it's really interesting because I can see some of these fixed mindsets when people are in the throes of their eating disorder versus a growth mindset. So the goal is a growth mindset, not a fixed mindset. And basically,
if I had a brain, I could.
Here's an example of a fixed mindset.
I could while away the hours, conferring with the flowers, consulting with the rain. In my head, I'd be scratching while my thoughts were busy hatching. If I only had a brain, I'd unravel every riddle for any individual in trouble or in pain.
With the thoughts you'd be thinking, you could be another Lincoln if you only had a brain.
Oh, I tell you why, the ocean's near the shore. I could think of things I never thought before, and then I'd sit and think some more. I would not be just a nubbin, my head all full of stuffing, my heart all full of pain. I would dance and be merry, life would be a ting-a-dairy if I only had a brain.
Okay. Oh, Scarecrow, if he only had a brain, his life would be amazing and he would change the world. That's a perfect example of a fixed mindset. So it might not be that if you had a brain, but it might be if I were only smarter, if I were only thinner, if I only had more education, if I only fill in the blank, then I could achieve my goals. And really that's just not true. It's false. As I've already shown you, that really it doesn't even depend so much upon talent, that hope is something that can make up the difference for some of that. So a growth mindset is the focus, and that's really about process and not results. It's about effort versus ability. It's about going after things and putting in the effort instead of just focusing on, well, if I can't get an A or if I can't run, do it perfectly, then I won't do it. It's about practice and persistence and valuing that. It's about taking on challenges, capitalizing on mistakes, and being inspired by other success. When you're in a fixed mindset, then someone's always better than you, and so why bother? Versus a growth mindset, when someone is where you want to be, you look at that and you say, wow, that's so amazing. If they can do it, I can do it too. So that's part of the process in having someone achieve their goals and have high hope, is to switch to a growth mindset, which I think is so important for people struggling with eating disorders, because the eating disorder really narrows your focus into more of this fixed way of thinking. So the other half of that proverb, hope deferred makes the heart sick, it doesn't stop there. There's hope to that proverb, as all ancient proverbs have a sense of hope. Hope deferred makes the heart sick, but a desire fulfilled is a tree of life. And so the sense that when our hopes are met, when the dream and the desire attached to our hopes is met, it literally does bring life to us, like the research shows. We feel that sense of life in our physical, in our social, psychological, and in our spiritual. And so we need to help clients look at what is it that makes them come alive.
Good kitty. Okay.
So I love this video. You got introduced there to Sophie and her mother and her sister in the background there. And so interesting, Sophie went from 0 to 60, right? She walked in that door from school, she was perfectly fine. She saw that puppy and she was literally on the floor. And I love how she doesn't even really look at the puppy for the first few moments. And my question to you in watching that is, you know, for Sophie, is a puppy just a puppy? And obviously the answer to that is no. Any child, adult might be excited about getting a puppy like that, but her reaction was really telling. That kind of reaction speaks to something bigger and greater. And so what I would propose to you is two things. Number one, I think something about animals and getting that dog for Sophie said a lot about her spirit, her sense of meaning, purpose, her sense of feeling loved by her mom. And that's why she was completely undone. And I would maybe even describe Sophie as one of these people who's super connected with animals. And I kind of make fun of these people because I think they're a little crazy, right? They talk about animals like they're a part of the family and they treat them like they're a part of the family. And it's not crazy. It's because there's this spiritual connection that they have with animals. And so I think that was the case for her. And then the fact that her mom saw that and gifted her with something that she could not gift herself with, that was so close to her heart. She was just undone. And so when we're talking about hope deferred makes the heart sick, but a desire fulfilled is a tree of life, that's what we're talking about. We're talking about those Sophie moments. And so how can you help clients connect with that which makes them come alive and feel like life is so worth living? So another piece of the research that I want to share with you that's tied into this that did surprise me at first is people who measure high on levels of hope tend to have big dreams for their life. That's a little bit of the Sophie factor. It's those things that they go after that make life meaningful and worth living. So one of the key interventions that I do with people to increase their hope, to strengthen their spirit as well as their soul and their body, is to do some dream work with them and connect them with the dreams that they have, those dreams that make them come alive. And this is so important when working with people with eating disorders, because the eating disorder really numbs out those dreams, and those dreams become filtered then through that lens of the eating disorder that just closes, you know, oftentimes a person's world and disconnects them from their spirit and their sense of dreams and dreaming big. So I'm going to only play a part of this video because it's a little bit long, but I wanted to at least share an inspiring video about one person going after their dreams. This is the story, true story of Matt. And Matt had a dream to dance around the world. That was his dream. And this is a little bit of him doing that. Okay, so what did you notice about Matt? I love this, and I love showing it to residents at TK because I think it's such a great example of the power of hope. And so we learned a lot from Matt and his story. First of all, Matt was pretty young, maybe 23, and he had this pretty lofty dream or this pretty lofty goal. And that goal was to dance around the world. And to be honest, if Matt were my client or Matt were my friend and we were having a conversation and he told me this dream in all seriousness, I think I probably wouldn't shoot him down, but in my head I'd be thinking, good luck with that, buddy, And but when we live in that place of hope that's so centered around who we are, the universe has a way of helping us achieve those things. It's because it's what we're made to do on some level. And so the story with Matt was that Stride Gum, and I don't remember the particulars of this, you can research it online, it's all online, but Stride Gum got a hold of Matt's desire to dance around the world, and they told him, okay, Matt, we will finance you to do that. And so that's how he ended up doing it, because certainly none of us probably could afford that. And you saw just a few of the amazing places that he went. The other thing that this teaches us about hope, which is true to the research, is that really it's not completely built on talent, because Matt, for all intents and purposes, and I mean this in the most honorable way, was a really bad dancer. He had one move until the nice Indian ladies taught him one more move. And so it wasn't because he was talented in this area that he wanted to achieve this dream. It was just something in his heart, like Sophie and the Puppy. It's just something unique about how Matt was made up, that this was a dream that he had for his life. The other thing we learn is that it's contagious. And remember about that electromagnetic field that I talked about, that when we're living in hope and emitting all of that, it's for us, but it also goes out into the atmosphere. And so he started off by himself, but then you just saw how it was contagious and how people, perfect strangers from all around the world, joined Matt and hysterically did the same bad moves, most of them, that Matt did. And so hope is contagious. And so we want to be around people like that. It helps evoke our hope. but we will also be a source of hope to other people. And this is something that we see so much in the alumni program at Timberline Knolls. As residents are further along in their recovery, them telling their stories is so powerful. And also now they're really ready. They're ready, now with their eating disorder, them being at a better place in their recovery, now they're ready to actually go after the dreams in their heart. And to watch them begin to do that is just so, such a blessing. So intervention number 4 is around this idea of the connection, the research connection between hope and dreams. So if you increase someone's ability to identify and go after their dreams, and they're living in high hope, and if they're living in high hope, that's going to bring health to their spirit, soul, and to their body. So here is an intervention that I do with clients. For you, if you're in a good place in your recovery, or you're a treatment provider, I would challenge you to get a hope journal and to log 100 dreams, to write down just what are dreams that I have for my life. Write down 100. And if I'm doing this at Timberline, I might only say, write down 10 dreams. And you can give people a lot of categories, like you have dreams for adventure, you have dreams for money, you have dreams for career, family, romance. And so coming up with 100 dreams, while it might be difficult, is not impossible. And then I have them hone in, maybe pick 1 or 2, and then we use SMART goals, the understanding of agency and pathways, and we actually have residents or alumni coach each other now. So here's your dream, how are you going to get there, and how can I support you and come alongside you. And it's been so powerful. I remember the first time I ever shared this, it was in a group therapy session at TK, and I had just developed this material, and so I decided to bring it to group. And so I was a little uncertain as to how the residents would respond. And honestly, it was a hard group that day. I remember walking in that day and talk about the electromagnetic field, the heaviness in that treatment center that day. It was really heavy. And here I start talking about hope and dreams, and I'm kind of looking around the room, trying to get a feel for the room. And, I don't know, because I didn't ask in that moment, but I remember thinking, man, I think they think I'm crazy. And they're probably thinking, gosh, I just want to get through the day without binging and purging, and you want to talk to me about dreams? But I pushed a little bit and had the residents write down 10 and then narrow it down to 1 that they wanted to work on, and that they would start working on even while in treatment, in residential treatment. And so 2 brave residents shared their dreams with the group and decided to let us dream coach them. And the one, very raw, very real, very early on in her recovery path, very honest, said, Dr. Nagib, I just want to love myself. Can I make that my dream to work on? And another resident who was much more further along in her recovery and kind of getting to that place of like, man, one day I can give back, said, my dream, honestly, is to have my own treatment center one day. So we started dream coaching them, and the group came up with some wonderful SMARTS goals along the path. So for the girl who wanted to love herself, they gave her the assignment of, why don't you keep a journal and every day interview 3 people and ask them what's lovable about you, and write them in that journal. And at the end of 90 days, maybe when you leave TK, you'll have 3 times 9. You'll have 270 reasons why you're lovable, even though you're not there yet, even though you might have a hard time believing that, which I thought was brilliant. It was a wonderful first step in achieving that goal of loving herself. And then for the woman who wanted her own treatment center, she also kept a journal and started just writing and dreaming in her journal about what would my treatment center look like, what would I call it, what components would I have, what about my own recovery have I learned that I'd want to include. And if you would have walked into the group at the end of the session when all of these women were talking about their dreams, it was a completely different atmosphere. In the beginning, it was heavy and quiet. And by the end, if you had walked in, you would have seen a lot of energy and a lot of excitement, and you would have wanted to be a part of that energy and excitement. So just a testament to the power of hope. All that happened in that 90-minute group therapy session was they had an opportunity to actually tune into their dreams and live and feel their hope. They completely changed the atmosphere. So Hope deferred makes the heart sick, but a longing fulfilled is a tree of life. This is where I talk to my clients about longing and desire. And that word desire is so interesting because I think in eating disorders, there's so much about eating disorders that the underlying issues really are about desire. But it's almost this dysfunction of desire. It's like, I can't forget my deep longing, my deep heart desires. I won't even let myself desire food or desire this type of food or this amount of food. And so I really see more on a spiritual, psychological level, I see eating disorders as a dysfunction of desire. And desire is really normal. It's normal and just part of being human. And yet the eating disorder twists that. So that's why you see the two trees there. When you look up that word desire from that ancient proverb, it has two meanings, like two sides of a different coin. On one end, it's the desires of our hearts that bring life to us, like that puppy and Sophie. But on the other end, it can bring demise when where we're trying to get that desire met only brings death or destruction. So a helpful analogy that I like to tell at this point is the story of spider monkeys. So here's a spider monkey. They live in Brazil. They're quite cute. And unfortunately, people try to trap these spider monkeys. And so they've come up with an ingenious way to trap them without killing them. And so you see that gourd. They're naturally occurring in their environment. And what they'll do is they'll hollow out these gourds and put a peanut in the gourd. And the monkey will find it, and the monkey will put its little paw, in the gourd and find the peanut and be so excited. But they've designed the opening of that so that when the monkey actually has the peanut in its little paw, it's now too small for that monkey to have its paw and the peanut. It can release the peanut and have its paw back, but it can't have both the peanut and its paw. What's interesting is these monkeys will sit there for hours because they don't want to let go of that peanut. And so I talk to my clients about how their eating disorder is like that peanut. There's this really good desire underneath it. Every person who I've treated ever, or I will ever treat, there's a good desire, a good thing, a good longing that needs to be filled underneath that eating disorder. But that eating disorder becomes the demise, and it becomes this lie, really. In that moment, that monkey is believing lies about that, peanut and what they need. And in the same ways, when we're caught in the throes of an eating disorder, we're believing lies about how we're actually going to get our needs met. And so if in your pursuit of getting your deepest desires and needs met, it brings destruction, then it really is just a big fat trap. And so how can you begin to look at your situation and start separating out what is actually bringing life to you, desire fulfilled, and what is bringing destruction? And now how can we help you get those desires met in really healthy ways? Basic categories of desire, and when I talk about desire, I mean that deep heart core of us, spirit, sense of meaning, purpose, and belonging. The kind of key ones, general themes, are security, so it's for a sense of safety and serenity and peace. Achievement, which involves recognition and success and personal power, so important. And another key is belonging, a sense of connection, a sense of being loved, a sense of joy. These are such key aspects of how we're wired. And somehow the puppy for her was connected to that. Somehow dancing around the world for Matt is connected to one of these or multiples of these. And for someone struggling with an eating disorder, to get at what are these key longings that are underneath that I'm trying to get met through my eating disorder, and how can I actually find ways to meet those that bring life and success and safety and serenity. So to do that, this is going to be really brief because this is really not the topic of today, but we look at what are some of the critical moments in your life where some of those key needs and desires didn't get met. And so maybe you learned a lie about, well, that need doesn't get met for me, or that's not possible for me. We also look at 3 modes of relating. So when our needs aren't met early on, how do we then compensate? So sometimes we get aggressive and angry. Sometimes we get compliant, and sometimes we just disengage. And so what's that mode that you've learned, and how does the eating disorder play into that? And then the ways in which you're getting those needs met, is it a treasure, like it's bringing you life, or is it really just a trap? And then finally, are you an object of desire or a subject of desire? So sometimes with eating disorders, we get caught up in body image, and I will be successful and appreciated and loved when I'm a certain weight. And in essence, what you realize there is you're actually objectifying your body, and you're becoming an object of desire instead of a subject of desire. A subject of desire says, what do I want out of my life? How do I go after what I want in my life versus waiting to feel a certain way? So finally, intervention 5, our final intervention for today, is helping your clients discover, what their deep desires are, what their dreams are. I call that, what's your desirability, right? Your ability to desire. And those are things that are bringing life, what's bringing demise, what good desire is this destructive behavior pointing to, and where are the areas of your deferred hope. So we have a few minutes for questions, if there are any other questions. Wanted to just remind you about putting your name in the comments if you're interested in getting that copy of my book. I would love to send that to someone, and it's also available on Amazon. But if there are any questions, I would love for comments. Just going to look and see if there's anything here.
I see one question for you while you're looking.
Great, thanks.
Margaret, there was a question about the book and what motivated you to write it, and how is that different than being in practice with clients as a writer?
Yeah, so it was really amazing to write that book. There were a couple things. It had been something I had been wanting to do for a long time, and it was also something that Timberline came to me and said, hey, it would be great to be able to have a book that clients could take and use. So it actually became this combined force of me taking all of the things that I have done with clients over the years and putting it in a format that anybody could pick it up and use it. So we use it in one of our groups, like I said, but anyone can use it on their own. It's like this guided process, and it really is all the years of effective interventions and things that I've learned over the years, and it's kind of like I'm in the room with you, helping you through that. And it is based on this body, soul, spirit premise, and that ultimately our spirit's the most important part of who we are, and that our spirit connects us to that which is greater, it connects us with God. And so it's actually doing the journey with God. So it's been this wonderful thing, and I'm so privileged to be able to have it now, and already thinking about working on my next book, which is going to go deeper into this body, soul, spirit concept and helping people understand that.
Wonderful. I think that sounds fabulous. I know most of us will be following you. So another question is, what about cynical clients that have a hard time regaining hope?
Yeah, I mean, if they're having a hard time relating to hope, cynical sounds like hurt to me. They've been hurt, and we've all had this experience where we have had high hope about something, and then our hopes were dashed, and completely, it feels like we were betrayed by our hope, that it actually hurt to have high hope because it didn't turn out the way we thought it was going to turn out. And so that's where I would love to just have a discussion and just, be honest with them and be like, yeah, I've been there too. I've been there too, where I've had my hopes up and then it didn't work out, and then I felt betrayed. And so my challenge to that person would be, where does that leave you? And so cynical is not a great feeling, and I really would like my hope back. And so what steps do we need to take to get you there? And, a lot of that is about grieving losses, maybe some forgiveness when other people were involved. There's so many reasons why that could be the case. So I would just be like, yeah, I get it. Been there. It's not, it's risky. It's risky. But in the end, it's kind of that research about big dreams. You also don't ever get to the desires of your heart if you don't risk hope.
Very wisely said. You do emanate some joy, and it's very for all of us to see. I really want to thank you for this excellent presentation. It was so uplifting. I know everyone's really enjoyed it, and I wanted to do a few final housekeeping measures. One is all attendees that want to earn CE credit for this presentation need to click in the chat window on the link and fill out a Google form. It's done online, and that will, it's just a quick survey about the presentation. Additionally, you will have needed to be here for the majority of the hour in order for us to award that CE credit. And last of all, if you have not yet entered your name for the book drawing, be sure and enter it under questions. Just put your name and book drawing, and we will enter it and be following up with sending one lucky winner the book. Lastly, we did record this, and we are going to make it available to all attendees for 1 week, and it'll be available 24/7 to view, and we will share that with you by the end of the day tomorrow. So with that, thank you, Dr. Nagy.
Thank you, everyone.
Bye-bye. Have a great day.
Bye. Take care.